Hello and welcome back to Betting People with Conor Grant. Now, Conor is the outgoing Chief Executive of Flutter, UK and Ireland, and they have under their wing Betfair, Paddy Power and Skybet. I just wanted to ask, first of all, people do talk about Betfair an awful lot for many different reasons, and I wanted to know, where do you think, I'm not saying you alone, but where do you think the company is in terms and the product is as you sort of exit stage left, and what do you think the future holds for Betfair and the platforms?
Look, I think we've been working on the platform for quite a while, and we're probably behind. We recognize that it needs updating, and particularly it's in need of it, and we've been investing in it. It's taken us much longer than we would have liked. I think, more broadly, I think the exchange has an important role to play in the business mix and within our products, particularly when you think about UK horse racing and the role and the disruptive role that Betfair played certainly in the last decade in really transforming the betting landscape. Some people see it as positive, some people see it as negative. Me myself, I think it's a big positive, and I think if you cast your mind back at the time, Betfair transformed in play. It brought cash out. It brought differentiators to the market, and it's lost some of that to a degree. And I think, but it had that early disruptor advantage, and I think it was hugely important. I think in terms of the business today, it has been more challenging, and there's no doubt about that. And as a result of that, from a UK perspective, I think internationally the exchange is doing really well, and we're bringing it to new territories, and it's providing great liquidity. And you think about it, the scale of the exchange and the amount that we've seen. It was over 1 billion matched on the last US election. It was just quite phenomenal. And that really was the exchange at the heart of what it's all about. People coming, matching their opinions and backing it, and they're laying it. And it was phenomenal. And the exchange was, in so many respects, it set the pricing in totality for the US election at that time. And particularly the strange election it was with Biden and then subsequently Trump challenging. But it's a hugely important part of our mix. It has got, as I said, the challenges, but what we have to do is we've got to continue to provide a service that customers want to use. And in recent times, we've obviously had lots more regulation for our customers, and particularly for professional punters who don't necessarily have a source of income. It's quite hard to explain that to the regulators. The role of the exchange. It is a niche product, but it's a very important product, and something that we want to continue to develop and continue to grow in.
You said about the new territories. Which new territories in particular are doing well, and do you plan to sort of go anywhere else with it? And as a follow-on question from that, one thing people do mention a lot is liquidity. They mention a lot of liquidity. I notice it tends to be, forgive me if I'm wrong here, but it tends to be a UK-based complaint about low liquidity in markets. So what's the plan to sort of try and combat that?
Yeah, look, the first part of your question, LATAM and is definitely an area of growth for us. And obviously we're very conscious we're a regulated business, and we have to be clear about the markets that we're going into. But there is opportunity in other parts of the world. And sometimes, I've only ever worked in the UK and Irish markets. We can be a little bit parochial in this part of the world, and there is a global betting market out there. And I think the exchange has an important role to play that. And we've seen that recently when the Indian Premier League cricket, the IPL, it was phenomenal, the volumes that we were doing through that as well. I think in terms of the UK, yes, look, there is a challenge there. There's no doubt getting away from that, and that's part of the increased scrutiny that we're under as a business from the regulator, and we have to adhere to them sanctions and the regulations, and fundamentally, customers, it's difficult to explain to them sometimes. It really is, but we have to follow this, and that's the license that we operate under. And in some instances, we do have to, because there isn't suitable source of funds and proof of funds, we can't continue. And it's really difficult because it's something that we need to do more. We need to educate more on the regulator side in particular. People that are professional punters, and I know them personally, some of them, they don't have a fixed income in the truest form of sense. But the reality is, as a sector, it's where we find ourselves in the UK, and we have to, as a business that wants to do the right thing, we have to adhere to it.
Just on the regulation, I believe that you have, and this is across Flutter, set a soft check of about £500 net deposits per month for quite a few players. Do you hope that's where any sort of future ruling in a gambling review might land, and what effect has it had on the business so far for those who have been tagged with that amount?
So look, there's a couple of answers to that question. The first one is, who knows where we're going to end up with the white paper. We've been waiting on it, and particularly we've got the white paper part of the gambling, and we've also got an affordability consultation with the Gambling Commissioner on. So it's dangerous to speculate on specific amounts. I think what I would say, I don't quite know where you got that number from, but I just wonder, is it being conflated with the under 25s where we put the £500 limit in, monthly limit? I think that might be good, because our view is that it has to be risk-based, William. The profile of a 21-year-old versus someone, I'll take myself, 44, 45, well, sorry, I'm cheating there, I'm 46 now. We've got different risk profiles ultimately. Yeah. And I think affordability as blanket measures is fundamentally flawed if we are really getting to the hub of how do we reduce harm. Affordability is an important piece, and I think it's a responsible thing to do. And I know there's lots of debate, and it depends where you sit on the spectrum on it. But fundamentally, I think it is the right thing to do, but it can't be overly intrusive. But equally, it has to help us as a sector make sure that we're doing our bit to minimize harm. And I think that's fundamentally where we have to go with it.
Do you think, from what you've read of the white paper, what you've heard of it, that the intentions are correct, that the right areas are being looked at, and some of the proposed solutions will be a net positive, rather than sort of misplaced energy that doesn't help anybody?
You certainly hope so, that it is in the right area. And look, fundamentally, it's a really difficult challenge for the government, because this is Conservatives and Tory governments, they're not an interventionist government, but what we're really getting to the heart of here is the choice of individuals. On one extreme, we have, do you intervene at particularly low levels and make decisions and tell people what to do, or do you give people the freedom of choice? And it's a very philosophical part of it depends where you ultimately sit on the philosophical debate. But what we do know is the people, and there is harm being created as a result of this, and there has been plenty of cases, and we've got to do more to address that. So you would hope the outcome would be that as a sector that we can have a massive reset of the Gambling Act, in particular resets our sector. The original 2005 Act, it was written at a time by Alan Budd in 2001, came into force in 2005, I should say, but that predated smartphones, it predated social media. So we need modern legislation that reflects how the sector has changed, and we need that to be we need it to be evidence-based, and we need it to be substantive in that it allows us to grow the businesses over the next 3, 5, 10 years without having to revisit. So would I be hopeful? It's yes, I would, but it's taken much longer than any of us would have liked. Hasn't been helped, and as a man who loves politics yourself, you've so much political change. We've had 3 ministers inside 18 months. We've had change of government, so it's a prime minister, I should say. So it's difficult to ascertain where we come. We're in a state of flux, and we need it addressed, and we need the white paper out there. But let's be quite clear, the white paper is only a moment in time. It's not a defining moment in time, because I think we will move through this. And I think what the big interesting question that's going to come out of the white paper for us all is, is fundamentally how much primary legislation, if any, will be contained in that. Because if there is plenty of primary legislation, that will lead us into a further state of flux. So I think what we really need to do is get the white paper out. Let's get our views clear. Let's see what's contained, and let's try and start implementing some of these changes so the sector as a whole can clear up its image and do more to protect consumers and really drive the business forward.
Just to switch to something a bit different, but Paddy Power still has a fair few shops going about the place, and it's been a moment of change for, well, been quite a few years of change for how people bet. What do you think the future holds for betting shops, particularly with online betting likely to get a big regulatory change, let's say, within the next 18 months?
We discussed this many times, and I personally think retail has still got a strong future and a part to play. I think, I have retail estates in the UK and Ireland, and it's really interesting. There's very little differences in the countries, but the differences that we're seeing coming through in retail is quite stark. Obviously, in Ireland, there's no such thing as fob teas, and it tends to be a lot more sociable experience. And in the UK, we continue to grow our footprint. I think retail has the potential to be slightly less intrusive for consumers than the online world. But I think as we move away from sort of more cash-based society to cards, does that impact? I think over the next 3 to 5 years for retail, what we need to see is an evolution of the bet in the shop experience. We're not going to have a US style retail experience in the UK. A, we don't have the premises, and B, just not going to happen. But I think what we will see is that we've experienced a number of closures in shops over the last few years, but I think very much dependent on what happens on the retail high street, in the more broader retail high street. I think retail continues to be an important component of the mix of all betting companies, and I think that's not going to change. 15, 20 years, it's very hard, but then none of us would want to be speculating that far down the line.
And as a sort of follow-up question, do you think that, say, and this is, again, it's quite a hypothetical situation, but do you think, say, if there are really intrusive